I've been seeing a lot of comments on social media, comments on photos of these anti-lockdown protesters. One of the photos that I've seen a lot of is this one right here. There is a man, he has a pot leaf on his chest, and he is yelling at some police officers, and this is in Michigan. You can see the officer here. It says Michigan on his arm. Well, the common criticism is that black protesters wouldn't be allowed to do the same. In this photo, we see this man, Kerry Pennebaker. He's a DNC member, saying a contrast in privilege. In one photo, we see this young black woman wearing a dress. It's a very famous photograph, and riot police have run up to grab her and arrest her. In this photo, we can see this white man with the pot leaf on his chest yelling at the cops, and the cops seemingly doing nothing. There's so much wrong with this. As somebody who's extensively covered protests, I'm going to break this down for you and tell you straight up, this narrative about white protester privilege is wrong. Not completely wrong, but the narrative they're pushing is almost completely wrong. It is absolutely fair to say there are disparities in protests. There is racial profiling. We saw it in Ferguson. It exists. But the idea that a white person is going to get away with something a black person isn't, for the most part, is absolutely false. And I have photo evidence to prove it. And I'll break down some of the nuance here. Take a look at this Wonkette article. They say all lives matter an awful lot when you're protesting while white. During Occupy Wall Street, there were mostly white people. In fact, what sparked some of the most outrage around Occupy was that there was, I believe, 3 or 4 white women who were standing on the sidewalk, and Officer Anthony Bologna walked up and pepper sprayed them for no reason. Where was their white privilege then? It didn't exist. And then the video of that went viral. It was one of the fastest viral videos ever at the time. And it sparked national outrage. This guy ended up getting reassigned. So I thought you say that all lives matter a whole lot when you're protesting while white. There's videos out of Occupy Wall Street of white people being whacked by cops. One guy having his head smashed into a glass door. I've seen all these protests, and I've seen the same thing. You see this guy, right? Yelling at the cops. All right. Well, there's a bunch of different photos of black people yelling at cops. Were they beaten and arrested? No, it's just protests. Protests happen. I certainly believe racism is a problem. I certainly believe in many of these protests you've seen unjust actions by the police. But to act like there's some racial, disparity here. So let's actually read this, and then we'll break this down. Before we get started, however, I got to give a shout out to my sponsor for today, Virtual Shield. In the description below, you will see a link, hidewithtim.com. It will bring you to this website, Virtual Shield site. This is a VPN service, a virtual private network. It helps keep your data safe while you're browsing the web. As many of us have increased our internet usage because we're all locked down, it becomes more important than ever to have some kind of security. So I always tell people security isn't perfect, but this is a basic level of security, right? You don't expect people to break into your home for the most part, but you do put locks on your doors and windows just in case, right? If someone really wanted to, they could probably kick your door in unless you got some beefy lock. Well, this is a basic lock for your internet. Stops spying, tracking. If you're doing banking stuff can be beneficial to you. So check it out, hidewithtim.com. And one last shout out for most of you who know Virtual Shield. They are my first sponsor. They've been there for me. And I'm really grateful that in these times when everyone's revenue's dropping and people are, losing work and unemployment is skyrocketing, I'm extremely grateful that I have the privilege, right, to have a sponsor helping support my content. So I hope you consider them when you're looking for a VPN service. Again, hidewithtim.com. Wonkette writes, if you follow enough of these Donald Trump rallies posing as COVID lockdown protests, you'll notice a pattern. No one's getting their butts beat. I'll keep it family friendly. This is what happens when entitled white people act out. It's a big party. You'd think a sports team had won a championship game. Last year, Sacramento, California, police arrested 84 people during a protest over the district attorney's decision not to file charges against 2 officers who shot and killed Stephen Clark, an unarmed 22-year-old black man. Friday, there was a hashtag fully open California rally at the Capitol in Sacramento with a motley crew of infectious stupidity that shouted USA and open up while waving around coronavirus-tainted American flags. I love the loaded language, by the way. They also got up in cops' faces and screamed like an old person trying to order at the Starbucks drive-thru. 32 anti-shutdown protesters were eventually arrested after calling cops traitors and trying to storm the Capitol. What happened to Blue Lives Matter? Well, if you've actually paid attention and talked to them, they've been repeatedly saying on social media that they don't like the cops that are enforcing unjust laws. There was a really great moment where a man, I believe it was Hank Newsom, showed up to a Trump rally and basically said, he was invited to speak by the Trump supporters. He said, we're not anti-cop, we're anti-bad cop. We're not protesting against police, we're protesting for our rights. And the crowd cheered for them. Lo and behold, when you actually communicate, the barriers break down. And you'd be surprised to realize that the protesters actually have a lot in common in their principles, freedom and civil rights. Now, they may disagree politically, and we often jump the gun and point the finger at each other. But it was one of the coolest things ever I had ever seen when the Black Lives Matter protesters came to the Trump rally, and the Trump rally people were like, come on up. We're going to give you your free speech and you have your say. And when the Black Lives Matter dude spoke, people actually cheered for him. Lo and behold, the real fight is not between people of different races. It's the populists and the elites. It's the class-based. It's the establishment, media, and the Democratic allies and the lies. You know what I think is going on? Why you're more likely to see, Trump supporters being vilified and attacked because Trump shattered the Republican establishment. Now, I'm not pretending like Trump's not an elite himself. Of course he is. But Trump is talking to the populists of the right wing. And there's one thing that the left and the right populists agree: the media is lying and propping up their crony establishment types. So perhaps if you took 2 seconds to stop and actually talk to these people about what they want, instead of saying, ha, 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 you got arrested, you could say, welcome to the fight. What you're experiencing with these police shutting you down, we experience all the time as well. And maybe now they might not agree with you, but they might say, well, I may not agree with you that you're always experiencing this, but I can certainly say this kind of thing should not happen. And you can stand hand in hand. I'm reminded of a story from Occupy Wall Street. A black dude came down to the park and started telling people, the people of color, don't, stand with these protesters. These rich white people never stood there and got your back. And this dude showed up and said, no, that ain't it. Another black dude said, my response is to all these young white people who are now protesting, welcome to the fight. He said, I'll shake their hand and say, welcome to the fight. Thank you now for joining me. Now, I'm not saying their protests were correct or their ideology was right. I'm saying when it comes to tact, when it comes to how you actually win, this ain't it. Insulting and attacking people for the color of their skin. But aren't they arguing for basically the same thing you were? Why would you now come out and insult them? You don't know these people. Why would you stereotype these people as someone who hated you? Another viral post talks about how these people were the ones who hated and yelled at Colin Kaepernick. First of all, if any of these people were criticizing Colin Kaepernick, it wasn't because he did protest. They agree he has the right to do it. They're saying that he was disrespectful. So by all means, you're allowed to say things and they're allowed to criticize you. That's free speech. But it's not even the point. The point is these people are protesting, and whether or not they disagreed or agreed with Kaepernick, not Kavanaugh, it's just another protest. And that's why it's funny when I see these photos go viral. I have seen photos like this 50 billion times. Okay. Oh, I get it. I'm exaggerating, but dozens to hundreds of times. There are photos of someone yelling at the police. It's everywhere. Here's another young woman who appears to be a black Muslim woman yelling at the police. Was she knocked to the ground and beaten and arrested? I thought there was something about her being white. What about this woman who's yelling at the police? What about this guy who's yelling at the police? You get my point, man. They want to spin this yarn. Here's a story from the Daily Beast. What would happen if I got in white cop's face? This is from updated April 14th, 2017, published December 30th, 2014. They say a photo of a young white woman screaming in an NYPD officer's face makes me wonder what he'd do if I did that. I think I better not. Well, I'll tell you what, man, a bunch of protesters have done just that and have been relatively fine. Now, I'll stop and say it's fair to point out maybe these people did eventually get arrested. I don't know their full stories. In fact, this woman may have actually been arrested as well. As they point out in the Wonkette story, what did they say? 32 people got arrested there. So what are you talking about, white privilege? They're getting arrested all the same. Stop trying to make this about how you don't like a certain race. Stop being racists. Everybody wants to be respected. Everybody wants their rights. And there are some people that want to take your rights away. Take it up with them. Stop yelling at the regular working class Americans who want their jobs back. They are not the police. They're not oppressing you. Stop, or you know what I mean? Listen, here's the issue I take with this. These are the people who are arguing for their right to protest. And they're going after regular working class, lower class Americans. Bro, weren't you just complaining about the police a couple of years ago? Why are you now defending them? I complained about the police too. This is what bothers me the most. During Black Lives Matter rallies, during Occupy Wall Street, I consistently complained and criticized the police when they were violating First Amendment rights. And I got all the praise in the world from these lefties. Here I am doing the exact same thing again, and I'm arguing with the same people who are like, well, now it's for our safety, not for rights. I don't care. You want to have an argument about safety? Let's talk about what happened in the camp during Occupy Wall Street when several people were assaulted. I'll keep it family friendly, but if you know what I mean, brutally. Or about the guy who took a dump on a cop car. You want to talk about safety and cleanliness and all that stuff? Spare me. I am talking about a principle. No, you shouldn't attack other people. No, you shouldn't, attack a cop and shove them and do these things. But but individuals, regardless of their ideology, have a right to protest and to peaceably assemble. Perhaps you guys, if you want me to continue defending you, should have me trust you. This was your opportunity. It was your opportunity to go to the people you view as those who wouldn't normally support you and say, hey, I'm going to support your protest. Can you do me a favor? Next time I protest, can you support my right to protest too? And guess what they'd say? Yes. You know what I love about this too? Take a look at the guy with the Guy Fawkes mask. Not typically a far-right symbol. But this is what you get, man, from people who want to weaponize this. They want to tell you that it's all about the color of your skin. Look at this one. The white woman yelling at the cop. This guy tweets, blinks in Black Lives Matter. Watching the way these white people are treating the police is a reminder that it was never about Blue Lives Matter. It was always about how Black lives don't. No, it wasn't. They're protesting completely different things. And these people, this woman, she probably didn't even know anything about what you have done. Why would you assume this woman specifically had bad-mouthed you in your protest? That makes no sense. Stop assuming you know who these people are. The same is true for the Black Lives Matter protesters. I don't know what this guy has been through. I don't know why he's angry. I'm not going to claim he's the one yelling at you to stop protesting. I'm talking specifically about the people writing for Wonkette who are. For all I know, this dude is legitimate, principled, and would defend someone's right to protest. Don't know, don't care. My only point is he has a right to protest. So do you. Welcome to America. The Constitution is awesome. Everyone needs to drop this act pretending like this is how the world always is. There is so much nuance there's so much nuance in how these things actually go down. Where people live, what their police have done in the past, what their department is made of, who the protesters are, what the protesters want, and what the protesters have done. So if you're going to criticize a group of dudes who are armed, who stand on the sidewalk, and that's it, and you're going to say they should be arrested, that's what we're apparently seeing with this photo, but then you're going to claim that other protests where there have been gas stations burned down are somehow special. You know what, dude? I'm not playing. Each protest is different. There's a big difference between people riding in the streets and torching limos and dudes standing around with weapons. And you know what? They all have a right to protest. But I'm not going to pretend like one side is always right. It's not true either. Sometimes the cops come during Occupy Wall Street. For instance, I called this out. Started arresting people arbitrarily. I was actually arbitrarily arrested in DC, but I didn't get processed. I got released. I have narrowly escaped arbitrary arrest in New York. You can call it out. It happens to everybody. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. 32 people were arrested. Keep in mind. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.